Usually when you hear the words official fact sheet, you kind of brace yourself for a cure for insomnia.
Oh, absolutely. It's the standard bureaucratic format.
Right. Like you
Yeah.
expect a document that reads like the instruction manual for a mid-tier microwave. Just rows and rows of numbers, bullet points, and, sterile data that completely strips the humanity out of whatever it's actually describing.
Yeah, demographers and government agencies, they tend to publish just sheer walls of statistics.
Exactly.
It can feel very alienating to the average reader. And honestly, it rarely gives you the actual pulse of a place unless you really know how to decode it.
But then you look at the source material we have for you today. It's this official document, densely packed with data, and it has this incredibly modest title of Basic Facts About Pakistan.
Very understated.
So understated. Okay, let's unpack this, because while it sounds like it might put you to sleep, if you know how to read between the lines, this document is actually a treasure trove of aha moments.
It really is. Data always tells a story if you look closely enough.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to take these raw statistics, everything from the heights of their mountain peaks to, like, the exact number of registered dentists, and synthesize them into a living, breathing portrait of a remarkably complex nation.
Which is such a fun challenge. We aren't just going to read a list of numbers to you today.
Definitely not. We want you to walk away from this conversation feeling thoroughly well-informed, without suffering from that dreaded information overload.
Yeah, we're going to uncover why these numbers matter, how they interact with each other, and really trace a path from the very founding ideals of the country all the way up to its literal geographic peaks.
I love that. So before we look at how the country functions today, we really need to look at the physical and ideological foundation it was built upon. The blueprint, so to speak.
The foundation is key.
Right. So the document highlights two central figures right at the top. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who's known as the father of the nation, and Allama Muhammad Iqbal, the national poet. Right away, you have a political founder and a poetic visionary placed side by side.
It tells you so much about the national identity right there.
And then you look at the official state symbols. Think of a country's flag and its emblem as, like, its corporate mission statement.
That's a great way to put it. The symbols a nation chooses to represent itself are highly calculated. They broadcast their foundational priorities.
Exactly. So the state emblem features the crescent and star representing Islam, but then it also has a shield showing 4 major crops, and it's surrounded by this cultural wreath.
Showing the agricultural roots.
Yeah, and right there on the scroll is Jinnah's motto for the country, which is faith, unity, discipline.
A very powerful directive.
And then you look at the flag. It's dark green with a white crescent and a 5-pointed star. But crucially, there is a very distinct white vertical bar on the left side.
Which is a very specific design choice.
Right. And the document explicitly states that the population jumped from 132 million in the 1998 census to an estimated 165 million, and it is 95% Muslim.
That's a massive, massive majority.
It is. So, considering the population is overwhelmingly Muslim, how does that explicit inclusion of the white vertical bar, which the text says symbolizes the rights of religious minorities, reflect the original vision of those founders?
Well, what's fascinating here is the deliberate balancing act embedded in that design. You have a nation that is explicitly the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Right. It's in the name.
Exactly. The green background, the crescent, the star, these boldly declare a profound commitment to Islam and the Islamic world.
Yeah.
But by carving out a specific permanent physical space on the flag, that white vertical bar, the founders were structurally baking the protection of that 5% non-Muslim minority into the nation's very identity.
Wow. So it's like a visual representation of a social contract.
Precisely.
It's a bold choice to put that on the flag itself rather than just hiding it in a legal document somewhere.
It is. And if you look at that motto you mentioned, faith, unity, discipline, you start to understand the sheer mechanical necessity of those specific virtues when you look at the geographic scale and diversity of the country.
Oh, the scale is just mind-blowing. We're talking about a total area of 796,095 square kilometers.
Right, but that landmass is not distributed evenly.
Not at all. The contrasts in the data are wild. You have the province of Balochistan, which is massive. It's 347,190 square kilometers all on its own.
It's a huge portion of the country.
And then you contrast that with the capital city, Islamabad, which is this tiny, concentrated hub of just 906 square kilometers.
Such a stark difference.
Yeah, and you add in the other major provinces, Punjab, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But I'm struggling to picture how the Fata region fits into this.
I is fata.
The document mentions the federally administered tribal areas and says they have their own distinct administrative machinery. I mean, why does a country have a completely separate administrative system inside its own borders?
Well, that is a crucial piece of the puzzle. Fata represents this deep historical legacy where local tribal customs and structures often supersede standard federal law. Yeah. Instead of a standard provincial government with local police forces, governance there relies heavily on tribal elders and a political agent appointed by the federal government.
That creates a pretty complex patchwork of authority, doesn't it?
It creates a massive administrative hurdle. I mean, unifying four incredibly distinct, vastly different provinces and a tribal belt with its own legal ecosystem is hard enough.
Oh, I bet.
But doing it while experiencing the explosive population growth you mentioned, jumping from 132 million to 165 million, requires an immense amount of structural cohesion.
Which brings us right back to the motto.
Exactly. Hence, faith, unity, discipline. It's not just an inspiring slogan. It's a literal, necessary survival directive for keeping such a geographically and culturally varied expanse intact.
To put that population jump in perspective for you listening, going from 132 million to 165 million is like adding the entire population of California to your country in a matter of years.
That is a staggering influx of people.
It is. Which naturally begs the question, how on earth does a government manage that massive influx? Like, how are 165 million people represented in a way that doesn't just evolve into chaos?
That brings us to the structural mechanics of their society, starting with the government.
Right. So looking at the data, it's a parliamentary form of government. They have a 100-member Senate, which is the upper house, acting as a permanent legislative body representing the provinces and territories equally.
Similar to many federal systems.
Yeah. Then there's the National Assembly, the lower house, with 342 members. But I noticed a very specific breakdown of those seats.
Reserved seats.
Exactly. Out of 342, there are 272 general seats, but they have explicitly reserved seats. 60 for women and 10 for non-Muslims. Does a mechanical system like that actually work, or is it just window dressing?
Well, it connects directly back to the philosophy of the flag we talked about earlier.
Oh, interesting.
When you have an estimated 165 million people, raw democratic voting could very easily drown out historically underrepresented groups.
Just by sheer numbers, yeah.
Right. So by constitutionally reserving those 60 seats for women and 10 for non-Muslims, the government structure attempts to mandate inclusion at the highest legislative level.
It forces it.
It is a mechanical guarantee of representation. If you leave it entirely to the general ballot in a massive developing populace, those specific voices might struggle to gain a foothold. This ensures they are literally in the room where the laws are written.
So it's forcing a seat at the table. But having a seat at the table is one thing. Preparing the population to understand and actually participate in that society is another.
Very true.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about education.
The data here is quite revealing.
The document lists the overall literacy rate at 53%. And when you look at the educational infrastructure, I want you to picture a steep pyramid, like a really, really steep one.
The drop-off in those numbers is staggering.
It really is. At the base of this pyramid, you have a very broad foundation. 155,000 primary schools.
Which is great. That sounds like a massive effort to get young children into the classroom.
Right. But as you move up the pyramid, it just collapses. From 155,000 primary schools, it shrinks down to just 28,728 middle schools.
Wow.
Then it narrows again to 16,100 high schools. And right at the very top, just 51 universities.
That is a massive bottleneck.
It's insane. Imagine your local school district, but only a tiny fraction of the kids in elementary school even have a middle school building to go to, let alone a university.
Yeah, that visual perfectly explains the 53% literacy rate. What you were looking at is a critical systemic challenge in developing human capital.
Because they can't scale it.
Exactly. The base intention is there. 155,000 primary schools show a clear societal desire to educate the youth. But the physical infrastructure just hasn't scaled to support the continuation of that education.
Which has to impact the economy down the line.
Absolutely. When you have a rapidly growing population of 165 million and only 51 universities, you face immense hurdles in transitioning your workforce into highly specialized, knowledge-based economic sectors.
I see a very similar bottleneck when looking at the healthcare data, too. The document lists 99,908 hospital beds across various facilities, basic health units, rural health centers, maternity centers.
A lot of decentralized care.
Yeah. But look at the medical workforce. There are 113,206 registered doctors. That's a fairly solid number.
It is.
But there are only 6,127 registered dentists. I mean, with 6,000 dentists for 165 million people, I imagine you have a better chance of summiting a mountain than getting a cavity filled on a Tuesday.
It's a stark ratio.
Wait a...
But it does highlight a harsh reality of resource allocation in a developing healthcare system.
How so?
When training capacity and funding are limited, a nation has to prioritize general survival over specialized care.
Oh, that makes sense.
You need general practitioners to run those 5,301 basic health units. You need doctors to treat acute illnesses, manage maternity care, and deal with immediate threats like tuberculosis.
Right. The document actually notes 289 specific TB centers, which tells you exactly what they are fighting on the ground.
Exactly. Dentistry is often a secondary phase of healthcare infrastructure. The focus is clearly on keeping the population alive and functioning at a baseline level across those massive geographic expanses.
Which makes me wonder, if the population has limited access to higher education and specialized healthcare, how does this massive group of people actually sustain itself day to day?
For that, we have to look at the labor force and the economy.
Right. So the document outlines a total labor force of 46.84 million people. Out of that, a staggering 18.60 million are employed in the agriculture sector.
That's a massive proportion.
Compare that to the manufacturing and mining sector, which employs just 5.96 million.
That ratio is a fundamental defining characteristic of the country's current economic state. It is a highly agrarian society.
But the economic numbers attached to that society made me pause. Their GDP growth is listed at 5.8%, but the annual per capita income is $10,085.
Yeah, that number usually catches people off guard.
I have to admit, I'm totally lost on that one. How does a person, let alone a whole family, survive on just over $1,000 a year?
It is a really common point of confusion when looking at raw economic data from developing nations. You cannot apply a Western urban cost of living mindset to that $1,085 figure.
Because it's an apples to oranges comparison.
Exactly. In a highly agrarian society where 18.6 million people work in farming, a significant portion of daily survival relies on informal economies. Many families live in generational multifamily homes, completely removing individual rent from the equation. They consume what they grow or barter goods locally. Cash is often only needed for supplementary items.
That changes the picture entirely.
Right. So while the per capita income seems impossibly low on paper, the actual purchasing power, parity, and community structures allow for survival in ways a pure dollar amount just doesn't capture.
That helps contextualize it immensely. And you can see that agrarian reality reflected in their trade, too.
Very clear.
Their exports rely heavily on what they grow, like cotton, textile goods, rice, leather items. Meanwhile, their imports are heavily industrialized. Things like industrial equipment, chemicals, vehicles, petroleum.
They're importing the tools they need to build the infrastructure they lack.
Right. But the part of the economy and society that really stood out as a bizarre contrast to me is the media and communications data.
Oh, the technological landscape in this document is full of contradictions.
It really is. It's like looking at an acoustic versus digital awakening.
That's a great phrase for it.
On one hand, you have 540 daily newspapers. Then you look at electronic media, and there is an absolute explosion of broadcast. More than 50 private TV channels have been issued licenses, and there are over 100 private FM radio stations.
Television and radio are booming.
Right. And mobile phones. Over 10.5 million connections. People are heavily connected by voice. But then you look at internet connections, and it's only 2 million.
It's a huge drop-off.
Wait, I'm confused, though. If they have 10.5 million mobile phones, why can't they just use mobile data? Isn't a phone basically an internet connection?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense based on the era of this data and the infrastructure. Those 10.5 million mobile connections are largely 2G networks and feature phones.
Oh, right. Not smartphones.
Exactly. We are talking about voice calls and simple text messaging, not smartphones streaming heavy data.
Got it.
Laying down the physical infrastructure for broadband internet or widespread 3G and 4G networks across massive rugged terrains like Balochistan is incredibly expensive and slow.
Oh, for sure.
But putting up a mobile phone tower for voice signals or a radio broadcast antenna, those can cover vast, difficult terrains much more easily and cheaply.
Ah, so it's a geographical and technological workaround. The broadcast signals can jump over the mountains, but laying fiber optic cables through them is a totally different beast.
Exactly. So what you have is a nation highly connected by voice and broadcast. News, culture, and political discourse are being shaped rapidly by these 50-plus TV channels and 100-plus FM stations.
Information is just flying across the country.
It travels at the speed of sound and light across the whole country.
Yeah.
But because full internet penetration is only at 2 million, the interactive knowledge economy side of connectivity is lagging.
Right, they can consume it, but they can't necessarily interact with it globally.
Yes, they are consuming information rapidly, but the digital infrastructure for them to participate globally, like building software, scaling remote digital services, or doing heady e-commerce, is still in its infancy compared to that massive broadcast reach.
And it all ties back to those exports and imports. They are exporting the physical fruits of that massive agricultural labor force, but they have to import the heavy industrial and technological equipment because those sectors are still developing.
It's a cycle.
But to sustain 18 million farmers, you need arable land, and more importantly, you need water. Where's the water coming from in a country that we know has massive deserts?
Well, this brings us to the most vital geographic machinery in the entire document.
The canvas all of this is painted on, right?
Yeah.
The extreme geography and natural wealth. The document lists the famous mountain peaks, and it's honestly like a who's who of the world's most intense climbing challenges.
It really is.
You've got K2, which at 8,616 meters is the second highest mountain in the world. You have Nanga Parbat, the eighth highest. Pakistan actually boasts 5 of the top 16 highest peaks on the entire planet.
The scale of those mountains is hard to even comprehend.
And then on the flip side, you have sprawling deserts, the Thar Desert in Sindh, the Khalistan and Thal deserts in Punjab, and then there is the incredible biodiversity.
The official flora and fauna mentioned in the text are direct reflections of these completely diverse ecosystems.
Yeah, the document lists the jasmine as the national flower and the deodar as the national tree, which thrives in those high mountainous regions. Then you have the markhor, this incredible wild goat with massive spiraled horns as the national animal, and the chakor as the national bird. It even mentions leopards and the rare Marco Polo sheep roaming these extreme landscapes.
Which is such a vivid picture.
It is, but woven between these extremes are immense bodies of water. You have huge glaciers like Siachen, which is 75 kilometers long, and Baltoro.
Massive reserves of ice.
Right. Those feed into massive rivers, primarily the Indus River, which runs for 2,896 kilometers. Plus, there are huge dams, Tarbela, Mangla, Warsak, that provide a large chunk of their 22,763 megawatt power generating capacity.
It's a very engineered landscape.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does a country with such violent geographic extremes manage to maintain a massive 25.01 million hectares of cropped area to feed its economy?
The answer is that Pakistan's extreme geography is both its greatest existential challenge and its absolute lifeblood. It is a brilliant, natural, closed-loop system which is carefully managed by human engineering.
How so?
Well, those extreme mountain peaks, holding the deodar trees and the Marco Polo sheep, they aren't just there for scenery. They hold those massive 75-kilometer glaciers.
Right.
When those glaciers melt, they feed directly into the Indus River and the Chenab River.
Which are basically the main arteries of the country.
Precisely. Those rivers carry the glacial meltwater down from the towering peaks, traversing the varied terrain, until they're caught and managed by those massive dams you mentioned, like Tarbela and Mangla.
And those dams do a lot of heavy lifting.
They do two vital things. They generate the hydroelectric power needed to keep the country's lights on, and they control the irrigation canals that flow out into the plains of the Punjab and Sindh.
Oh, wow.
Without that specific chain of geographic events, from the heights of K2 to the flow of the Indus, managed by those dams, you simply do not have 25 million hectares of cropped area.
And if you don't have that cropped area, you don't have the 18.6 million agricultural jobs.
Exactly. And if you don't have those jobs, you don't have the cotton and rice exports that sustain the entire GDP.
It is all incredibly interconnected. I mean, you literally cannot separate the snow on top of K2 from the per capita income of a farmer hundreds of miles away in the plains.
It's a domino effect.
The geography dictates the economy, which dictates the labor force, which shapes the need for basic health units in primary schools. It all stems from how they interact with that intense landscape.
This raises an important question, I think, about how we consume information. It proves the immense value of looking past the sterile surface of raw statistics.
Totally.
A fact sheet is just a skeleton. It is our job to understand the muscle and the heartbeat underneath it. When you understand the why behind the data, you begin to see the genuine human story of a developing nation navigating its way through the modern world.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to take a second to look back at the journey we've just taken. We started with what looked like a dry, bureaucratic list of bullet points. But you, listening right now, just saw how those numbers paint an incredibly vivid picture.
A very rich picture.
We looked at a nation built on the dual vision of a politician and a poet. We saw a flag that explicitly carves out space for minorities in a nation of 165 million people.
Which is a profound commitment.
We explored the structural challenges of a steep educational pyramid, and we traced the path of water from the second highest mountain in the world down the mighty Indus River to fuel an agricultural workforce of over 18 million people.
It's an amazing system.
And to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. We talked about this explosive population growth, this massive young human capital, and how heavily anchored the labor force is in traditional agriculture.
Yes.
But we also saw that incredible leapfrog into mobile phones and broadcast media. As the global digital age eventually fully supersedes the current era of traditional TV and radio dominance, as those 2 million internet connections inevitably multiply, how will this massive agriculturally rooted population reinvent itself?
It's going to be fascinating to watch.
When the acoustic awakening finally goes fully digital, what will the new blueprint of this nation look like? Until next time, keep looking past the raw data and keep seeking the story underneath.